But if not him at wide receiver, what about this KJ Osborn kid? My 6th highest player this week, my 3rd highest wide receiver, only 5% rostered, so very good chance he's out there in your leagues. He stepped right into the every down role after Adam Thielen stepped out. The next 70 snaps as the number 2 wide receiver saw a 17% target share there, hauling in 4 of his 7 targets, 47 yards, and a TD in that Week 13 game. Now, if Thielen's back, of course, Osborn back to the bench, not a stretch run season ring. But we do have Thielen with a high ankle sprain. Typically, that's a 3 to 5 week absence. We've seen that all year, any high ankle sprains. So that could sideline him the rest of the season, in which case Osborn would be locked into an invaluable role with Cousins. Yeah, I don't love the guy real life-wise, but he is serving up fantasy goodness week in and week out for his pass catchers. And Osborn, he's seen 6 targets in only 5 games, 6+ targets. In those games, he has scored 14, 20, 5.6, 19, 8.8, and 14.7 fantasy points, averaging 5 receptions, 63.6 yards, and in 3 out of 5 games, he scored a touchdown. Wide receiver 34, 14, 69, 13, 21 in those games. You tell me this guy's not going to see 7+ targets at least this week and give you like that top 20 wide receiver upside against the Steelers team that's bottom 10 against wide receivers? Love him as a 1-week rental, but has that type of upside to go bananas down the stretch. Word of the day, bananas. But I do think KJ Osborn, one of those guys that could be a huge addition for stretch runs here. And a guy that we know, we've seen it. Osborn's more of the sexy appeal of the unknown, but a guy we know gets it done, and you've heard me talk about him, if he could ever get himself healthy, is Sterling Shepard. He's been hurt throughout the season, hurt early in games, but the 3 full games he played, 7 receptions on 9 targets, 113 and a TD, wide receiver 8, 9 catches and 94 yards, wide receiver 21 on 10 targets, 10 catches for 76 yards, 14 targets, wide receiver 19. Oh, and then dating back to the last 2 of last year, also went crazy with 112 and a TD on 8 catches and 10 targets and 77 yards and a TD on 9 catches. Was wide receiver 4 and wide receiver 11 across those games. So we've seen him be a top 20 wide receiver in all 5 of his last 5 full games played. The rub here is 1, he can't get himself healthy. 2, Daniel Jones isn't healthy. Then Mike Glennon's also out. So we're looking at like Jake Fromm potentially throwing to him. So this is more of a stash and let him get healthy like Daniel Jones, because down the stretch, they got Dallas. They got a nice, easy cakewalk schedule for the final fantasy playoffs. I could see Sterling Shepard being a nice key cog, especially in full PPR leagues where he is just an alpha target hog if he's healthy. Not a bad play at all at only 28% rostered, worth a decent amount of your fab. Now, this guy could be the best pickup of the week, Dontrell Hilliard, 42% rostered. Last time out, had 131 yards on the ground and a TD, was avoiding tackles left and right with 5 total of them. Did haul in 1 reception for 2 yards. The week before that, had 10 targets and 8 catches. The rub here, though, yes, averaging over 15 fantasy points per game in his 2 last games, looking very solid. And if he maintains that clear-cut role as like a 1B plus the clear-cut receiving back, I would bump him to number 2 or 3 ahead of Foreman on this list. I'd be the more valuable guy. My concern, as it says on the banner there, beware of Jeremy McNichols. He's been with the team all year, whereas Hilliard's only been there for a few weeks. And yes, Hilliard has outplayed him. He's looked better, and McNichols has been hurt. Maybe, I believe in Vrabel being that earn your spot and you're available and you've thrived. You're it now. Could be him. That's why he's all the way up here at 8. But I'm also wary of McNichols coming in and these two just are splitting those third down works, or worse, Hilliard sent to the bench. So that's why I'm not sitting here, as a lot of people may be recommending, throwing out a ton of money to go get Hilliard. Nah, I wouldn't hate having him. I'd like to see what happens, because if he does maintain this role, like I was saying, he'd be the top pickup of the week. So good to put on the bench. Would like to see what happens. Maybe even usable against the Jags. He could be. But ultimately, I'm not spending a ton of money to go acquire this guy. I'd rather have Foreman. His role feels more locked in. Now, everybody sprinted out to go get Chuba Hubbard out of this backfield. The Panthers, after we saw McCaffrey go down, most likely going to see the majority of touches. I mean, he did average over 15 carries at 80% of the workload, rushing workload there with McCaffrey out earlier in the season. But even still, with that work, Chuba never finishes an RB1, was extremely inefficient, was below fantasy points, below the expectation in all but 2 of his starts. And in those ones that he was above, it was by like half a point. He never was more than a full point above fantasy points per expectation. So highly inefficient Chuba Hubbard. Then we got Ameer. All those games came without Ameer Abdullah on the roster. Since he's been on the team, we've seen Abdullah run 37 more routes than Chuba. He's seen 13 more targets than Chuba. He's been the clear-cut pass-catching guy on a team that's probably going to need to throw a lot given how bad they are. Now, against Atlanta, this upcoming week against the Falcons, of course, Chuba is in a smash spot as they should win the game. He should be bleeding clock, should see about 20 carries. But if they get down, Abdullah would do a ton of damage in the passing game. And with a tough schedule moving forward after that, you got the Bucks, the Saints. Those definitely could force the Bills. All of those could force negative game scripts. And in that type of script, I do think Abdullah is the more valuable guy. So I 4% rostered and very, very minimally attention going towards his way this week. I think he could be a sneaky running back stash. Let's see what happens. Let's see how this plays out. Very, very overlooked right now. I think Ameer Abdullah could have a nice stretch run role given the game scripts that this team is lining up for after they face and smash Atlanta this week. And maybe they don't even smash Atlanta. They're not that good. I don't even know why we're talking about them as a clear-cut lock over them. My number one tight end of the week is Tyler Conklin. Kind of makes pretty obvious sense with Adam Thielen banged up. Conklin, second on the team with 9 targets. Yes, we did see God mode Justin Jefferson, but right behind him, the second highest leader of targets on the team was Conklin. He's 30% rostered. I would say if you need a tight end, 20% or so fab. But again, if you're desperate for a tight end and you just need to blow it all, it makes sense at this point of the year. You're not going to get the money with you. And this guy, especially if Thielen's injury lingers 3 to 5 weeks as it could, would be a tight end 1 for all those games. He had 12.6 PPR fantasy points with 7 catches, 56 yards last week. Just solid, safe target share. Ran a route on season high 78.7% of the dropbacks. Just a nice low end tight end 1 here for your stretch runs. Don't forget, this guy did have 10 plus fantasy points in 3 of 5 games for a nice stretch. Was a top 12 tight end during that span. And that was with everybody around. Now he could be the number 2 target for the next few games in your fantasy playoffs. Solid guy to keep your eyes on. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.